change that to some extent. We've seen not only purges of career public servants who have done nothing wrong and have simply done their job to the best of their ability. We've seen resignations because of the concern that politics is infecting the way DOJ operates. And so this is really an unprecedented situation that I think DOJ is facing, and I'm not sure it's going to improve anytime soon. And I think to your point, this latest example, the indictment of Jim Comey, I think just has a lot of people, certainly within the department, just like people outside the department, kind of wondering what is going on at DOJ and can we trust what's happening from DOJ?
Well, we just heard from President Trump, and he says the indictment of James Comey is just the beginning. Take a listen.
Now that James Comey has been indicted, who is the next person on your list in this retribution?
It's not a list, but I think there'll be others. I mean, they're corrupt, but there'll be others. Look, that's my opinion. They weaponized the Justice Department like nobody in history. What they've done is terrible. And so I hope there are others, because you can't let this happen to a country.
So given that message from the president, what is this moment like for career officials inside the DOJ? And what are the conversations that you're hearing?
Well, like I said, I think it's challenging, and I think it's incumbent upon the political leadership at the Department of Justice who would clearly say that this is not true, that the department is not being politicized, that investigations and prosecutions are not being done for political reasons. If that's the case, it's incumbent upon DOJ leadership to be out front and to be out publicly talking about the fact that they are strictly adhering to traditional DOJ principles of prosecuting cases, investigating cases without fear or favor, and not for political reasons. But the more I think that leadership just allows this increasing belief on the part of the American public that the opposite is true, the more that will become their reality within DOJ. So this is going to be a kind of a moment of truth for DOJ leadership to address these issues head on and to be able to rebut the seemingly mounting evidence that many decisions, including this latest one, seems to be based on politics, seems to be based on a presidential directive as opposed to actual evidence. So they have a challenge on their hands.
You're an advisor to the group Justice Connection. It formed this year to help protect DOJ employees. So what do you even tell them in this moment?
Well, you know, it's important, I think, for those who can to hang on. You know, the men and women of the Department of Justice at every level, whether it's prosecutors or other attorneys, criminal agents, staff, you know, these are some of the smartest, hardest working, most dedicated public servants I've ever been associated with. And so for those who feel that the mission is important, still important, and who can carry on, need to carry on. I mean, they need to kind of do their job as best they can. The problem for many of them is they fear facing a dilemma at some point whereby they're asked to do something that they can't legally, morally, ethically do. And that's a tough dilemma to face. And so that's why we've seen, I think, so many leaving, because they just don't think they can carry out the current mission as they understand it. But again, it's a department, it's a mission that, frankly, the American people and our democracy can't survive without. It's incredibly important that DOJ and everything it does is functioning every day. Criminal enforcement, all the litigation that the DOJ handles for the United States of America. It's just incredibly important. It's not an optional department or agency that the democracy could get by without. It's absolutely critical to our democracy, and it depends on the people doing the work to have faith in the system to be able to do that work effectively.
Greg, if I can, I want to play for you what a former clerk for Supreme Court Justice and Trump ally Neil Gorsuch said about this last night.
I would say to these lawfare Democrats that politicized and weaponized intel agencies and law enforcement to go after President Trump, his top aides, and his allies, these lawfare Democrats better lawyer up, because justice is definitely coming.
So there is a debate that's going on about whether or not Donald Trump actually thinks he can win prosecutions here if at the very least, what he wants to do is disrupt their lives. Top lawyers, defense lawyers, aren't free. Some come at a very high cost. And even if you're well off, that can quickly mount if you have to defend yourself in a federal case. Is the financial and emotional pain potentially the point here?
Well, I think it's certainly part of it. You know, there's an old saying that the power to indict is the power to destroy. But the reality is, Chris, that the power to investigate can often be the power to destroy. And so it can be very, very challenging for those on the wrong end of an investigation. But to add one more point about the clip you just showed, you know, this whataboutism that we hear all the time from certain people on the right, it just really isn't borne out by the facts. You know, there is no evidence, frankly, that the Justice Department and the intelligence community was politicized or weaponized during the Biden years. There's just no evidence of that. I'd like to, you know, get Chris Wray's impression of that and the other leaders of the intelligence community agencies and DOJ. I'd like to hear, you know, if them respond to that. There simply is no evidence. No one has been prosecuted. No one has been fired for politicization of the intelligence agencies. It's a talking point that is simply not borne out by the facts.
What worries you most in this moment, Greg?
Well, I guess I get back to just my concern about the American people's faith in the system of justice. You know, when I would go into court on behalf of the United States of America, just like, you know, AUSAs around the country do every day, there's an expectation on the part of jurors and judges that those lawyers are there for the right reason. They're
behind them. Donald Trump understood this in his own political campaign, and yet he's now making Comey a martyr for the rule of law. That will be the first line in his obituary. That he was an FBI director, but that he became a martyr because a president said on social media to an attorney general, go and arrest this guy for the first time in our lifetime. And so now the world looks at James Comey and they see that he is a political and a legal martyr. Nobody thought that way yesterday, but they sure as hell are going to think that way today and tomorrow and into the future. And again, if you don't believe me, again, just go back to the 2024 campaign and look how the Republican Party was ready to move on to a certain Florida governor. And then the indictment started coming down against Donald Trump. And that brought the Republican Party together behind him and eventually led him to be elected the next president of the United States. This is not hard. And yet the White House keeps making the same mistake. Jimmy Kimmel, record numbers. Right. I mean, talk about going viral. It's extraordinary what Donald Trump did for Jimmy Kimmel's career and what he has now done for James Comey's reputation. That's the political side of it. Really quickly before we go, I want to ask you first, Danny, and then I'll get to Barb on the prosecutor's side. But as a defense attorney, Danny, tell me, what would you do if you had the President of the United States saying to his Attorney General, this guy is my political enemy, arrest him, he's got to be put in jail, he's guilty as hell, saying something along those lines, he's guilty as hell, he's one of the worst people in the world, time's running out, you remember that one? Time's running out, it's statute of limitation, you gotta do it now, we've gotta bust this guy. Okay, I've just put the ball on the tee and given you a bat to hit with it. What would you do hitting that ball off the tee? It seems like an open and shut case, doesn't it?
Well, let's start with the primary defenses. Attack the statute. The defense is going to be, this was not a material statement, this was not a false statement, and even if it wasn't a knowingly false statement. But then we get into what you just described, and I expect you will see a motion for dismissal based on selective prosecution. The problem is, all federal prosecution is selective, and these motions have a very, very small chance of winning. That being said, this is probably the best case ever for a selective prosecution motion. But be warned, they are not often successful because, after all, that's what federal prosecutors do. They have limited jurisdiction, so theirs is a sort of selective process. They can't prosecute everything that falls within all federal criminal statutes, so they have to look around and decide where to focus their resources. And that, the government will argue when this motion comes, is exactly what they did in this case. The problem for them is going to be the paper trail of evidence. Not so much things like the U.S. attorney is inexperienced, but far more compelling is the public statements that the president has made saying, get this person. But again, I'll say it for the third time, be warned, that part of the defense is probably, as crazy as it sounds, the weaker part. The better defense for Comey is to attack the charges themselves. My statements weren't false, they weren't material, and even if they were untrue, they weren't made knowingly. That's his best shot.
They've already been investigated. And yet, Barb, while this doesn't usually work, you usually don't have a president ordering his attorney general to arrest a political enemy.
Trump really stepped in it. I don't think a lot of his supporters, certainly he doesn't realize it, that he just, again, created a broad unity of people who are probably divided in a lot of specific ideological questions, but know that this is an attack on the rule of law. He's going to create another coalition. It's not going to be identical, but it's the same sort of thing he did when he went after Kimmel, when he created a broad alliance of people that, of course, included the Democrats and progressives and whatnot that oppose him already, but that also included people like Ted Cruz, right? Ben Shapiro, who stood against him on an idea of principle. Now, on this one, maybe I don't know what Ben and Ted are going to say about this, but you're going to create yet another coalition of people that don't fit neatly on the anti-Trump part of the political spectrum, but nonetheless see this as an attack on the rule of law, as an attack on the independence of the prosecutorial state, and as an attack on the independence of law enforcement. That if you serve in law enforcement, especially at the federal level, and you do something that Donald Trump doesn't like, or you don't do something that he wants you to do, that sooner or later he's going to come and get you. He's either going to fire you because you don't get the people you want him to get, or you're going to be one of the targets. And people see this. They see through it. It's not typical that you have former DOJ people, career people that served in the DOJ, where their job was getting criminals, at least a lot of that was a part of their job, at least, to get criminals. Coming out and saying, commenting on an active case, which again, they probably wouldn't normally do, saying this act, it's a travesty. Trump has created a unity that we have not seen on this front, maybe ever. Certainly not even in his first term.